The race for the White House, former Vice President Mike Pence is officially running, and today he wasted no time taking aim at his former boss, arguing that Donald Trump should never be president again.
But the American people deserve to know that on that day, President Trump also demanded that I choose between him and the Constitution. I chose the Constitution, and I always will.
Mr. President, do you feel that you owe him an apology?
No, because he did something wrong. He should have put the votes back to the state legislatures, and I think we would have had a different outcome. I really do.
If Mike Pence was president, we might see a return to something like blessed normality.
Well, today we're going to be discussing Mike Pence. And originally I had started working on this video with the intention of going through his entire interview with Jordan Peterson. But I don't really like making hour-long videos, and that's how long the video was going to be, so I decided to change it, and we won't watch the whole thing, but we'll skip around and highlight the best bits. Just a disclaimer here. I'm not a fan of Mike Pence, so if you're looking for some sycophantic knob-slobbing video from the one Pence supporter out there, you're in the wrong place. I am not that guy. Because Mike Pence is not a real person. He's the non-alcoholic version of a real person. Mike Pence is like the human embodiment of a curated newsfeed on social media. Nothing about him is real. It's all algorithmic. He was created in some Koch brothers lab where they formulate politicians at. He's been carefully constructed and manicured to cater to the interests and commonalities of older boomer and silent generation types. What kind of person is Pence attempting to appeal to? Are you 90 years old? Do you watch the 700 Club? Have you sent money to Kenneth Copeland? Did you volunteer for the Reagan campaign in your 40s? These are the types of people that old Mikey is trying to rope in. This interview was interesting because you get to see how Mike Pence talks in a casual environment, which does allow for a candidate to express their authenticity. Peterson had recently interviewed RFK Jr., and RFK had been on Rogan's podcast as well. He was so authentic and real and smart, and whatever you want to say about him or his family, the man has had an amazing personal life and has a very unique perspective, which he can articulate extremely well. He has a lot of personality. Mike Pence, on the other hand, is nothing but a well-rehearsed talking head. He has his lines that he has to hit, and by God, to defeat the communists and the socialists, he'll hit them with everything he's got. The most authentic Mike Pence ever gets is when he comes home, takes off his suit, peels off his human costume. He can let his reptilian tail drag on the ground, kick his claws up, and enjoy a nice glass of adrenochrome. So there's a couple responses from Pence that I want to hit on in this interview. The first question Jordan asked him is, why run for president now?
Well, Jordan, just thanks for having me on. I've been an admirer of yours for a number of years. Was turned on to your work by my kids, a few of whom you met out on the road and on the trail, and so it's a joy to be with you. Look, the decision to run for the highest office in the land is one that no American would ever take lightly, and my family and I have given great thought, great prayer, and deliberation to this question over the last 2 years. And frankly, ultimately, it comes down to two things. Number one, it's the privileges that we've had to serve, the experiences that we've developed. I was not only vice president serving America at home and abroad, but I was also a governor of a successful state in Indiana where we cut taxes and expanded educational choice. And before that, for 12 years, I was a leader of House conservatives in the Congress of the United States.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it here because he's already said a lot, and there's one thing I want to get to before we can move on. He said he was a successful governor of the state of Indiana, where, quote, he cut taxes and expanded educational choice. Now, these are BoomerCon buzzwords for sure, but are they backed by anything? Well, let's see. The personal income tax cut alone from 3.4 to 3.23% reduced state revenue by roughly $295 million this year, and has contributed to Indiana's unfortunate distinction of having one of the most regressive tax systems in the nation. As seen in Figure 1, families with incomes over $484,000 received an average personal income tax cut of $1,555 this year, compared to just $54 on average for the middle 20% of Indiana families, or approximately $2 per biweekly paycheck. That's it. That was the crazy tax cut that Pence did that really helped Indiana families move forward. We had the same phenomenon in Kansas as well with Sam Brownback. The conservatives only have the balls to cut taxes, but never cut spending, and so it creates huge deficits, which then the left uses to bash them over their heads with for the rest of their term. And in Pence's case, it didn't even cut taxes that much. It's just such a waste. It's not even, I wouldn't even bring it up if I was running for president.
And the sum total of that 20 years of experience gives us the confidence that if we were given the privilege of serving as president of the United States, that we'd be prepared. We'd be prepared to bring this country back, which leads me to the second reason why we decided to run, and that was, I think this country's in a lot of trouble. I mean, as I've traveled around the country over the last 2 years, it's clear to me that Joe Biden and the radical left have weakened America at home and abroad. And we need new leadership I believe in the Republican Party and in the White House that'll set this country back on a path of a strong national defense, of limited government, of a commitment to freedom and to traditional values. And
okay, so he lists these three things that the U.S. has to get back to. The first is strong national defense, which is code for put the neocons back in charge. Get the war machine back up and running. Most importantly for the Pence-style conservatives is to get the propaganda machine back up and running. Because war is out right now, and no one really supports it. A Pence administration would work overtime to get Islamic terrorism back in the public psyche and be afraid of it again, and try to build back endless support for Israel and, the usual neocon stuff. As for limited government, this is a phrase that just drives me crazy. In 2023, we are so far from a limited government, and Pence knows this. It's purely a boomer buzzword that is completely hollow. The U.S. government hasn't been small and limited for all of our lifetimes at this point. And beyond that, we should just embrace it and use the weight of it to crush our enemies. But we can't do that. That's completely off limits. As far as a commitment to freedom and traditional values, that doesn't mean anything. It's a throwaway line. If it means anything, it means to be left alone. The freedom to be left alone and unmolested from the federal government, which we know is just liberalism and open society BS that just has led to everything that is wrong with the country right now, right? Pence doesn't stand for anything. All he stands for is the empty values of the establishment. That's all he is. All this is just meaningless.
And it's in response to that. It's in the belief on which I was raised. I don't know if it made it in 12 rules, but it's an old rule in my life that to whom much is given, much will be required. And my family and I have been given much. We've been given incredible privileges and opportunities to lead. And when we look at the challenges facing our country today, we just felt we had a duty to step forward. We do so with great enthusiasm.
Oh man, Mike Pence isn't like the other candidates. He's not in it for money and power and to push a well-crafted agenda. No, he's the most altruistic person in the country. We should be so lucky to have him in office.
And we've been very humbled at the outpouring of support that we've received.
No, you haven't received support. You haven't received support from anybody. I'm telling you right now, he has not. Pence is like a political transsexual. Before a person transitions, they have beliefs that prevent them from dating men. Or maybe they're gay and that prevents them from dating women, or whatever it is. But after they transition, they're now so hideous and taboo that men don't like them and women don't like them either. And now they're relegated to being with only other trans people. They're disliked equally by both sides of the binary. The left hates Pence, and now the right hates Pence as well for what he's become. He's a political transsexual. Maybe he's gotten some support, but it ain't enough to be president. Okay, so moving along here. The next question he's asked is what Peterson calls the question that no Democrat can answer, which is, when does the left go too far? Of course, the correct answer here is a layup. It's if they go at all, right? But here's Pence's response.
Well, look, I've been at this a while, but I never thought I'd live to see the day that socialism was the animating economic philosophy of one of America's two major political parties. I like to say to people, Joe Biden won the nomination of his party in 2020, but Bernie Sanders won the party. I mean, all the policies that you've seen flowing out of the Democratic Party and out of the Biden administration are driven by European-style socialism and welfare state policies, and that's too far. I mean, as I said, we're a nation that was founded on the constitutional principles of a limited federal government, a free enterprise, free market, private property. All of those things have been a wellspring, along with our faith, our family, as a foundation of creating the strongest and freest, most prosperous nation in the history of the world.
This is nothing more than a fantasy, right? Like, to think that free markets and the invisible hand and the freedom to choose and blah, 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 it all save us. It's just become so clear that they aren't the answer, and they're not even desirable anymore because they don't fall into line with observable reality. Pence is such an anachronistic old fuddy-duddy. I'm so tired of hearing the same stuff. Go away. Okay, so we're moving on. One of the other examples that he lists of when the left goes too far is like CRT and gender stuff in schools. So Jordan asked him, what would he do to fix the school system? I mean, it seems like it's a pretty important thing to want to fix, and we can all acknowledge that it's broken, but what would a Mike Pence administration do to fix it?
Now, go back to your question, because I think it's the fundamental question. And that is, so how do we push back? And I will tell you, I believe that giving parents the ability to choose where their children go to school, public, private, parochial, or homeschool, is the cure for what ails education in America. I think your point about teacher certification is a profound one, but I'm very struck by the fact that someone who I'm sure you respect a great deal, in fact, a couple, Milton and Rose Friedman, maybe one of the great free market economic minds of the last century. He left his entire estate to a foundation to promote one idea, and that was educational choice. Because Milton Friedman said, our form of government will not survive without an educated citizenry, and that the only power strong enough to transform and renew American education is the free market.
So what is his conservative take on CRT and gender madness? It's just concede the entire school system that mass indoctrinates everyone's children to the left, and then we'll just focus on making some little alternatives and some choices. Because there's nothing more scary than taking away the liberties of your enemies. That is the ultimate sin in the GOP. He's supposedly a conservative. So what is he conserving? Nothing. He immediately gives it up. And he says, let's move on and we'll try to just go do something else. Well, we know what the answer is. You fire and you outlaw the teachers who teach this ideology. But, that would be just like the Nazis. You ever notice how the Nazis do all the effective stuff that we're not allowed to do? Makes you wonder. Now, recently, Pence went a bit viral for his answer to Tucker Carlson's question on Ukraine. Tucker said, hey, America's collapsing and you want to send all of our money to Ukraine? What about America? And Pence's response was, that's not my concern. And it's true. It's not his concern. Jordan Peterson asked him about the situation in Ukraine and what Pence would do about it. Here was his response.
Well, I'm someone that believes that America is the leader of the free world. We're the arsenal of democracy. You know, I'd have one hand extended in friendship and the other hand resting comfortably on the holster of the arsenal of democracy, so that those who are enemies of freedom around the world, who would threaten our people or threaten our allies, would know America means business.
Oh boy, the arsenal of democracy. Yeah, that saying, hearing him say that, should send shivers down your spine. Also, Ukraine is not a democracy, okay? We know this. Zelensky has banned every political party from running against him. And beyond that, you know, there's this whole problem of democracy itself. Why do we worship it like we do? At this point, knowing what we know, it's fair to ask, is it even desirable? Is it even doable? And if some country wants to be something other than a democracy, what right does the U.S. have to enforce itself on that country? There's this idea that the U.S. is a democracy and a shining city on a hill for the rest of the world to emulate, but at this point, it's a horrible example. What does democracy get you? It gets you inefficiency, corruption, nepotism, bloat, decline. Well, who would want that? The arsenal of democracy, okay? Well, that is the GOP's concern, maintaining that, deploying it, blowing up little brown kids all over the globe. But what does that mean to Pence exactly? Well, let's hear him explain.
In 1985, Ronald Reagan, in a State of the Union address, articulated what came to be known as the Reagan Doctrine, which essentially said, it'll be the policy of the United States that if you're willing to fight the communists in your country, we'll give you the means to fight them there so we don't have to fight them here.
Now, the situation in Ukraine basically comes down to a fairly local border dispute between two neighboring countries on the other side of the planet with a history that goes back to way before the U.S. was even around. You mean to tell me that if Russia were to expand its country a little bit to the areas of Ukraine that already love Putin, already voted to leave Ukraine and join Russia, it means that Russia would be dropping troops in Ohio and we'd be fighting the communists on the streets in Dayton? Please. Who believes this drivel anymore? The Cold War horror scenarios are worthless at this point.
And it was part and parcel of what ultimately brought down the Soviet Union. And I believe that wisdom is still true today. That Ukraine is not our war, but freedom is our fight.
I've heard him use this line multiple times. Ukraine is not our war, but freedom is our fight. I'm pretty sure he said it in the Tucker Carlson interview, too. There's still another 25 minutes of interview after this point, and a lot of it is Pence rambling about how Ukraine should basically reject any peace talks, and the only solution is for Russia to be pushed back all the way out of Ukraine, which honestly is the most evil possible position to have. And just like in the Tucker interview, he used this opportunity to bash Biden for not being fast enough to provide Ukraine with all of our military firepower that Pence thinks Ukraine needs to fight the Russians. So let's wrap this episode up and put a bow on it. The unfortunate reality in 2023 is that the GOP is not an actual opposition party. If you're looking to them as a beacon of hope for populism or nationalism or reactionary politics, you're looking in the wrong spot. Even if you're looking to them to do the bare minimum and fight the left, as any sane human being would, you're still looking in the wrong spot. If you were to actually drain the swamp, it would include 99% of every politician with an R next to their name. Pence doesn't represent you. He represents his donors. He represents crony capitalism and the Washington war machine. When pressed for real solutions, he has none, and he can only provide the same tired copy and paste platitudes and bumper sticker talking points that conservatives have pumped out for years and failed to produce results with. In years past, this sort of lazy candidacy could have given the left a run for their money, but instead, career politicians like Mike Pence are completely see-through these days. The Liz Cheneys, the Mitt Romneys, the Paul Ryans, the Lindsey Grahams are all going extinct, and they can barely show their face in public now because the disparity between their establishment positions and the base are growing wider and wider. This is what was on display when Tucker interviewed all of the 2024 candidates. He exposed that disparity. And it really didn't even take that much either. You just scratch the surface and you find that they don't have your interest in mind at all. In fact, they kind of despise you. They think you're stupid, or that you won't see through their act, or even if you do, that you'll be so desperate to vote out a Democrat that you'll hold your nose like you always have and vote for them instead. I truly believe that there's a dictatorship looming in America's future. It doesn't have to be like that, though. But election after election, with poor candidates like Mike Pence, are accelerating us towards that future. We are in a very dire situation with extreme problems and extreme consequences if we do nothing to fix them. A modern candidate cannot fix those problems because extreme problems require extreme solutions. If you have something that's really dirty, do you use the most gentle cleaner on it you can find? Of course not. You have to step it up to something heavy duty. Mike Pence could have been a decent leader in 1950, but the dirt wasn't that bad back then. What we are facing now is going to require a leader capable of much more than what a wimpy Mike Pence is. In Academic Agent's 59 Theses, he says, the disorganized masses are passive, feminine, and easily manipulated in all times and all places. Before an election, well, that's exactly when the people are disorganized. They are yearning for a true leader to emerge that they can rally for. In every election cycle, we all sit around and we wait and see who is the best of the best, who's the most competent, who can actually get us out of the mess we're in. And honestly, in the base, we're waiting for a dictator. Someone who is actually going to get serious and do what must be done. And the truth is, people would overwhelmingly support him. But unfortunately, for the time being, we're stuck in this stupid loop while we have Mike Pence running for president. His candidacy is a joke, and we all know it. He's the ultimate example of being unable to read the room. He's a case study in trying to manufacture consent. But I think the Trump phenomenon is too powerful, and he won't be able to flip anybody, especially the base, to support a guy like him. So in the end, he was nothing more than a meme. Anyways, that's all the time I had for today. If you enjoyed this video and type of content I'm making, consider giving this video a like or maybe subscribing. I will see you all in the next video. Peace.